that women are only used for the objectified, that we can use as a things.
Yes, it's horrible. 97, they looked at scenes of one man, one woman.
Hmm.
97%,
Hmm.
97% showed some kind of aggression, either physical or verbal, toward the female. Men have always been the dominant ones. Men have been the hunter gatherers. Men have
Hmm.
been the providers. Men have been the protectors. Going back to tribes existing, in Mesopotamia. If I'm making love to my partner, it's not
Hmm.
just about the sex act. It's about sharing my love in a different way. It's about sharing energy and doing it back and forth and showing this person how much they mean to you.
Of men are no longer how to be turned on by the real human touch.
100%, because the real human touch
Hmm.
also sometimes comes with rejection. The
Exactly. Yeah.
real the
Hmm.
real human touch comes from people who you can't control.
Hmm.
The real human touch isn't always a positive experience if
Hmm.
it's just not working in bed. But if you think about it, sitting in front of pornography, nobody is ever going to say to you, Samir, you didn't take out the trash. Samir, you're late to work. Samir, you got a bad job on this test. Samir, I don't want to be intimate with you tonight. Nobody on the screen is going to say anything like that. And
Exactly.
then on top of that, because of just the volume, the
Hmm.
hundreds of millions of pieces of pornography out there, you can see anything you want. In your real life,
Hmm.
statistically, you will never be part of an orgy. That's like
Yeah.
2% of the
Yeah.
population.
Yeah.
But you can watch 1,000 different orgies.
Hmm.
You can watch all kinds of crazy stuff that you will never hook up in your own life. If you're watching a man and a woman have sex,
Hmm.
well, why do I need to have the man there? Let's have two women. Push a button. Okay, well, I
Yeah.
don't want
Exactly.
I don't want to watch two white women. I want to watch two black women. Push a
Hmm.
button. Well, why only two? Why not three? Push a
Yeah.
button. When you think about this, nobody's going to give you any trouble on the screen, and you can see almost anything you've ever wanted to see. That is a huge position of power. That is a huge position of control. You
Yeah. Agree.
risk a lot of
Hmm.
your emotion if you try to be intimate, if you try to build a connection with somebody else. You sit down with your phone or your computer, you don't have to worry about your feelings being hurt. You don't have to worry about being rejected. So there are a lot of men and women out there who choose pornography over true human intimacy.
But don't you think that is also affect to the teenagers that who already viewing hardcore porn daily, okay, and starting to believe that women are just things to be used, that women are only used for the objectified, that we can use as a things.
Yes, it's horrible.
Right now,
I
there is no respect I can see that
no,
they
I
having for
saw
the women.
I saw a statistic recently that said a college looked
Hmm.
at 100 videos from the two most popular adult websites. 97, they looked at scenes of one man, one woman.
Hmm.
97%,
Hmm.
97% showed some kind of aggression, either physical or verbal, toward the female.
Agree. Yeah.
You look at these videos and you see men with their hands around women's throats. You see them bending their bodies in a way that regular people don't have sex, and this doesn't even get to the degrading ways that they finish the sexual behavior. This teaches young boys especially a lot of unhealthy sexual beliefs. And what's happening out there, when I gave a presentation several years ago at a college to a women's sexuality group at a health center at a college.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave my presentation, did the whole song and dance. And at the end, I did my Q&A session. And one young woman said, "Have you heard about how college women don't want to be with virgins?" And I've said, "Not really. Why don't you tell me about this?" And all the girls' eyes lit up. And since then, I've probably asked 500 women about this, and it is true. These college-aged women do not want to have sex with a virgin because these guys have grown up watching porn. And I've heard stories of the most meek, normal, simple, nice guy. You get him behind closed doors, you start to get intimate, and he throws you on the bed and calls you a bitch because that's what he's watched for the last 5 years of his life. And these women have told me they don't want to be with virgins because they have to train the virgins how to behave. Because they have to train them, no, real sex is not like porn. We're not going to have a porn scene here. But these guys have grown up on it so much. That's what they believe they're supposed to act like. And a lot of women this day and age will simply not have any of it. I think that's why you see the rise of things like incel culture, because a lot of women will simply not put out, not have sex, not get intimate with a man that doesn't have some sexual experience, other than thousands of hours of pornography behind them.
Exactly. So the average female porn, the actress retires in less than 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the average. So often mentioning the severe psychological traumas, cruelty, or abuse. What are your thoughts on the ethical cost of the industry and why are so comfortable using women's trauma for the entertainment?
Because we view these people, especially when they're on a device, not as humans. They are objects. They are just a sack of body parts.
But that's a woman also agreed for that one, right?
Both ways, yeah, absolutely. People who watch porn, this is why you don't watch porn to find out how artistic somebody is. You don't watch porn to find out how smart someone is. You watch porn because you want to see body parts. You want to see sexual activity. And unfortunately, in this industry, it's full of people who have a ton of trauma. It's full of people who have other chemical addictions, and it's full of people who are taken advantage and trafficked by some, very despicable people. That said, you can go back to the 1970s. One of the only things on this world that has ever united hardcore conservatives and hardcore liberal feminists is that pornography is bad. There was a huge push in the 1970s to ban pornography from both of these very diametrically opposed groups. It didn't work. And we've been talking about the conditions for porn stars for years and years. But I think it falls on deaf ears because honestly, if you walk into the kitchen of an Olive Garden, you're going to find a lot of people with trauma. You're going to find people who have drug problems. You're going to find people who have all the problems that people in pornography have. So I think that we just don't relate to them as people. We just don't have empathy for who we see on the screen. No statistic, I always tell my clients, no statistic is going to get you to stop. You have to find your reason to stop. How is it going to hurt your life personally? Yeah. How is pornography going to cause a problem in your life moving forward? Why must you quit? And I've never heard anybody say, because the actresses are treated horribly. Nobody has ever said that, because for most people watching pornography, they detach or disassociate that they're watching humans who have parents, who have brothers and sisters, who have kids, who have personal problems, who have to pay their rent. It's just body parts.
Exactly. Right now, even though if you even the search term, if you can see right in the pornography site, that's the stepmom have sex with his own son, the brothers have sex with their own sisters, kind of things.
That's the number
That's
one
a
genre in the world, is the faux incest genre. It's
Hmm.
called faux-cest. That's the number one genre in the world, and everybody denies it has to do with the family relationship, and it just has to do with it being sexy, but there's a reason why this genre is so popular, um, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where the world is going. That right now there is a no value of any relationship right in the world, right? So that's related to the questions that why do women have discovered that partners the porn addiction often feel ashamed, as if they are not hot enough, instead of furious that trust was violated. So where does this toxic shame cycle begin?
Um, it usually begins sometime long before they ever met their partner, long before they ever found out that he or she uses pornography.
Hmm.
Um, it usually starts out when they're young and they have trauma themselves. And they end up with this partner, and they
Hmm.
believe that this partner does not use porn, does not masturbate, that they are the only person in the world who they have sexual feelings about.
Hmm.
And this is 100% their belief, 100% their truth.
Hmm.
And then they find out it's wrong. This would be like me saying to you, you know who you think your parents are? It's not them.
Hmm.
Oh my God, are you serious? Well, if you're with a man or a woman for 10 years, you don't think they ever use pornography, and you find out they've been using pornography for 10 years, usually a couple things happen. And I help many clients. This, what they
Hmm.
experience, is known as betrayal trauma.
Hmm.
And let's take a woman who discovers her husband is using, for an example.
Okay.
Usually the first phase is wondering what you did wrong. Am I
Hmm.
not pretty anymore? Am I
Hmm.
not sexy in the bedroom anymore? Am I not enough for him? What's wrong with me?
Hmm.
And then they usually figure out very quickly it has nothing to do with me. But then
Hmm.
the next stage is, oh my God, he lied to me about this. And I believed him for 10 years. If he can lie to my face about this,
Hmm.
what else has he lied about?
Hmm.
Does he make the money that he says he makes? The people he talks about at work, are they real? What can I trust? And not just what can I trust that he's told me, how can I trust him moving forward?
Hmm.
And then the last phase is, so what do I do?
Hmm.
Because so many people, husband and wives especially, you've got a mortgage on your house, you have 2 car payments, you have kids, you have pets. It's
Hmm.
not like you're dating this person for 2 weeks and can walk away. If you've been together 10, 20 years, do you unwrap your life? Do you push your partner to recovery if that's what they need? What do you do next? That's a scary place, especially for people as they get older. If you're a 55-year-old woman and you
Hmm.
discover that your husband of 25 years has been using pornography, do you really want to hit the dating circuit for the first time since 1995 as a 55-year-old woman? Probably not.
Yeah.
So it's very, very tough for them to figure out how to navigate their partner's problem.
So after they had solution for that, they are living together or they are separated.
It depends on who it is. There is no one solution. So
Hmm.
I always, I let these people know that you are going to have to decide if one day, because we all decide, and many people don't realize how many decisions they make in a day. We
Hmm.
make decisions nonstop, and
Hmm.
they are going to have to decide eventually. It may not be today. They're going to have to decide if they can ever trust this person again. You can think of everybody in your life. You've made a
Yeah.
decision whether to trust them or not. And that has to happen here. And when you reach that decision, there are really three decisions to have happen. You walk away because you
Hmm.
can't trust them.
Hmm.
You decide to trust them and they get healthy, and
Hmm.
hopefully you live this is
Together.
a
Hmm.
speed bump and you continue, or your partner won't get help, but you
Hmm.
decide that you can't leave, so you're going to ride this roller coaster for the rest of your life because you have some issue with leaving. And as a coach, it's not my job to decide what's best for you. It's my job to show you what the options are, talk through them with you, and
Hmm.
help you decide what's best for you. Because what's best for one person may not be best for the next.
I agree. So there is also some argument that sometimes the woman chose to be in a porn, or others call it form the exploitation. So based on your experience, what's the real truth?
Uh, I think that as long as you are staying within the bounds of the law,
Hmm.
you are free to do whatever you want.
Hmm.
And you just have to accept that you may not appreciate and understand what the
Hmm.
true consequences will be. I don't want them to ban pornography because to me, that's banning First Amendment speech. Because to me, that's banning people's choices. I I love to go to Las Vegas. I'm not a big gambler at all. I was in Las
Hmm.
Vegas a couple months ago for 4 days. I probably lost $75 over 4 days.
Hmm.
I pay more for that to see one show.
Hmm.
I don't have the gambling addiction gene.
Hmm.
I don't, because 10 or 15% of gamblers are addicts. That's terrible. But I
Right.
don't want you to ban gambling. I don't have the problem.
Hmm.
I don't want you to remove a bunch of food from the supermarket that's not good for you
Hmm.
because there are obese people who eat this stuff. I think that we do have free will.
Hmm.
And I think that as long as things are legal in this world, we should not be legislating people's behaviors.
Yeah.
We need to be educating them on what the best choices are to make.
Right. So do you believe that the many women describe the discovering their partner's porn use as a worse than infidelity? What have your client told you in their rawest moments?
Um, Many, yes, do view this as infidelity.
Hmm.
And many people also say it's not cheating. But I understand how you can say looking at pornography is cheating, because
Hmm.
cheating is simply breaking the rules. If you are playing cards and you stick some aces up your sleeve,
Hmm.
you take them out at the right time, that's cheating. That's breaking the rules. If you
Hmm.
go take a test at school and you've got the answers on your hand, that's cheating. That's breaking the rules. So, if you and your partner have a conversation and
Hmm.
you agree that you will not use pornography, you will not view it, you will not masturbate with it, and then you go ahead and do that, you're breaking one of the rules of your relationship. I'm guessing not lying is also a rule, so you're breaking both of those rules. That's cheating. You're breaking the rules, trying to get away with something. That's cheating. Is it infidelity having sex with somebody? No, of course
Yeah.
it's not.
Hmm.
But it can still be viewed as a form of cheating.
So, so as you already that handle so many clients, that let me talk about the recovery part. Now, many people ask that can a porn addict ever truly change, or in your opinion, what's the separates the one who gets sober from ones who stay stuck forever?
There is a big difference between quitting and recovery.
Okay.
Quitting porn is just starving yourself.
Mhm.
And that's not going to lead to anything.
Mm.
The big question when it comes to recovery is not how do I quit porn? It's why did I start porn in the first place? How did I
Right.
get to where I am today?
Mm.
That's the big question. Quitting is easy. The hard part is figuring out how you got to this point. What happened to you when you were young? How did you make these decisions? What
Mm.
was that trauma? How has that trauma affected your life? How can you process that trauma now so you can move forward without the addiction? It has to be a mindset change. It has to be a lifestyle change. I explain this to people as talking about a diet. If you have a 600-pound person who loves candy, if they give up candy for a month, they
Mm.
may lose 30, 40 pounds.
Mm.
But all they did was starve themselves from candy.
Right.
At the end of 30 days, they don't like candy any less.
Mm.
They still want candy. They're just denying themselves. It's the same thing with pornography. When I hear a guy say, I've got 60 days no use, I'll say, so what are you doing to figure out why you became an addict? What do you mean? Well, there's going to be a day that's not easy to not use. There's going to be some horrible news. There's going to be something that shocks you and surprises you. There's going to be some level of sadness or rejection, and you're going to go back to it because you don't know how to handle any of that. Being an addict at the core is about not having coping mechanisms that are healthy. If you're a 13-year-old kid and you start using pornography and start masturbating, and it occurs to you, well, gee, I always feel good doing this. This makes me forget the bad stuff.
Mm.
So you get home from school after a bad day and you use. Your parents are nasty to you that day. You use. You can always use and feel better. So if that's how you deal with life, you don't develop healthy coping mechanisms.
Right.
So I deal with men and women in their 20s, 30s, 40s who have no coping mechanisms other than to give in to their addiction, because their addiction always has been their coping mechanism. People who use pornography as an addict, it's not about the sexy time. It's not about the naked people. I've had so many addicts tell me, 5 minutes after I'm done, I can't tell you anything I looked at. Or, I wish I could just hit a button and get my dopamine. I don't even want to look at this stuff anymore. I don't care about this stuff anymore. But it's the only way I know to get my dopamine. It's the only way I know how to cope. So part of recovery is figuring out healthy coping mechanisms where you've used pornography in the past. And if you just decide, well, I'm going to try to quit on my own and just quit, I've never seen that be successful. I've never seen that be successful for an addict.
So, do you believe that trauma is the only cause that make a because of the only trauma that many persons are trying to addict into pornography. Many people are going for the pornography because of the pleasure too.
Oh,
What's your
absolutely. But
opinion?
the pleasure is why you do it. The pleasure is
Hmm,
how you get hooked.
hmm,
The pleasure takes away the pain.
hmm,
And even if you're not getting pleasure from the naked people, you're still getting the pleasure from the chemicals.
hmm,
Porn addicts are not extra big fans of sex.
hmm,
Porn addicts don't like breasts or
hmm,
genitals more than the next person.
hmm,
They're addicted to the chemicals, just like a food addict, just like a video game addict, just like a heroin addict or a coke addict. Now, granted, every addiction has its own unique set of side effects,
hmm,
but at the core, it's all about the chemicals. Food addiction doesn't take place in the stomach.
hmm,
Cocaine addiction doesn't take place in the nose. Porn addiction doesn't take place in the genitals. All
hmm.
addiction takes place in the brain. That's what needs to be fixed. And people need to recognize that. It's not about the reason that addicts use pornography is not the recreational use that a typical non addict uses pornography.
So when you handle your clients, maybe that you handle the couples also, right?
Yes?
What are the problems with the relationships they had so that husband or the wife jump into the pornography? Are they are not physical intimacy enough? They didn't sex regularly. They don't have emotions for each other. What are the causes that you found between the couples?
Usually, well, if that's I don't say if that's all that's happening. If you're talking about a non-addicted man or a woman, a non-addicted partner, that's
Mhm,
handled very differently than an addicted partner. If
mhm,
your husband or your wife is addicted,
mhm,
it has nothing to do with you. They
mhm,
were an addict long before they met you. And I tell people, I became a porn addict at 12 years old. I
mhm.
met my wife when I was 26. How could she have anything to do with my porn addiction? I didn't know her for 14 years.
Wow.
And
Mhm,
porn addiction will do things. It seems counterintuitive, but porn addiction actually reduces your libido.
mhm,
You would rather sit in front of your computer for 10 minutes and get the job done than go and have relations with your partner for 30 minutes. It's too much work. It doesn't cause the same dopamine. You just want your fix. That's what that's about. When you're talking about partners who are not addicts,
mhm,
a lot of time it comes down to problems in the marriage, and ultimately it always comes down every single time to communication and trust. They can't talk about this stuff, so they
mhm.
go off and do their own thing, usually in violation of the rules and agreements in their relationship. And it comes down to, how do I trust you? And unfortunately, in a lot of those situations, it's doesn't it's not missed that, oh, now they're sorry. They were
Hmm.
never sorry when they were using. They
Hmm.
were only sorry when they got caught. And how can we make sure they're not going to use again? What do they need to do?
Hmm.
Many times I see couples, I will say at the end of our first meeting, and this is usually with men, I only think he's here to placate you. I only think he's here to shut you up. I'll see you 2 or 3 times. You'll feel better. You'll stop coming to see me. And within a few months, he'll be doing this behind your back again. He has no interest in stopping. He has interest in you getting off his case so he can go back to doing this.
Yeah.
He's not sorry he hurt you. He's sorry he got caught.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, that's the case most of the time.
Yeah. So Why is the men are encouraged to be sexually liberated through porn, while the woman who speaks out against it labeled as a prudes, jealous, or the controlling? What is this male entitlement culture really doing these marriages?
I think that this goes back in history. There's no time in history where women really had the upper hand on men for
Hmm.
long stretches of time. Men have always been the dominant ones. Men have been the hunter gatherers. Men have
Hmm.
been the providers. Men have been the protectors. Going back to tribes existing, in Mesopotamia. It's just something that has always happened through life, through the world. And I
Hmm.
think it's not necessarily part of our DNA, although it may be. I think it's mostly just the culture we grew up in. My kids don't have that belief, or
Hmm.
I did not raise them with the belief that men
Hmm.
were better than women, stronger than women, smarter than women.
Hmm.
But and that's a Generation X person raising a Generation Z person. My parents were baby boomers.
Hmm.
This is when 50s, 60s, this is when sexuality was very conservative.
Hmm.
This was when there was traditional family values. So everybody had their role, everybody
Hmm.
had their part to play. And that's what I was raised with. Generation X, I think, is the tipping point. My parents, my grandparents, so sexually repressed, so
Hmm.
conservative. And then you look at millennials and you look at Gen Z, very, very sexually liberal.
Right.
Gen X was kind of that switching point. I think it was my generation that
Hmm.
said, no, women can be equal. Non-white people can be equal. People
Hmm.
who are not just straight can be equal. And I think if we give this time,
Hmm.
it's going to be much more even. I just think that we are victims of history. We're victims of culture. And that culture is not too long ago.
I agree. I agree. So, do you believe that porn can be the intimacy killer? Can you explain that how porn destroys the emotional safety and the sexual connection between the two people?
Absolutely. Anybody can go have sex.
Hmm.
Anybody can purchase sex. Anybody can go out to a bar and find somebody to take home and have sex with. That's fairly easy. Sexual intimacy is the
Hmm.
easiest kind of intimacy to achieve. You can do it in one night,
Right.
but you can't call an escort and have them come over and give you emotional intimacy or give you intellectual intimacy. That
Hmm.
is something that's built over time. And I think for many people, they do not separate sexual intimacy with emotional intimacy or intellectual intimacy. It's the concept of having sex versus making love. If I'm making love to my partner, it's not
Hmm.
just about the sex act. It's about sharing my love in a different way. It's about sharing energy and doing it back and forth and showing this person how much they mean to you.
Right.
If you're doing that with them, and
Hmm.
then you find out that your husband, your boyfriend, doesn't ejaculate just with you, he
Right.
ejaculates 5 times a week to
Hmm.
women who look nothing like you on the computer. That can be an emotional and an
Hmm.
intellectual betrayal. And that's where it hurts the intimacy the most. It's not the sex part of it. It's
Yeah.
the emotions. It's the intellectual intimacy. It's the feeling that you trust this person so you're willing to do things and go to places and be vulnerable
Hmm.
with this person in a way that you won't with any other. Yeah, you can go have sex, but you are being truly intimate, truly vulnerable. And that involves a huge amount of trust. And then you find that this person broke your trust.
Hmm.
That can absolutely rock your world, and you don't want to be in the same room with them. You can't imagine how you would touch them again. All of
Yeah,
the emotional intimacy disappears in 1 second.
yeah,
That's how it takes its toll. It's not the sexual intimacy, it's the emotional and intellectual intimacy that takes the biggest hits.
yeah, agree. Okay, let's talk about the young generation now. So, as a recent UK study showed that kid as young 8 years old are being exposed to porn.
Mhm,
And by the 16, almost 90% of boys watch it regularly.
mhm.
What does that do the mind of children growing up with the porn as their first sex education? From where they should get the first sex education? Parents or school?
I believe parents 100%
Mhm.
because children build bonds with their parents that they, if healthy, will be the strongest bonds they have, except for a partner one day, or maybe their own children one day. These are strong bonds. And you don't have to scare a child when they're young. You don't even have to say the word pornography.
Hmm.
All you have to do is tell your 4 or 5 year old, hey, I just want you to know that it's not allowed for anybody to take pictures of you without your clothes on. And
Hmm.
you're not allowed to take pictures of anybody else without their clothes on. And then maybe when they start school at 5 years old, because some kid will bring his phone to school at 5 or 6, or his mom or dad's
Mhm.
tablet to school at 5 or 6. Hey, I just want you to know that if one of your friends at school or one of the kids at school shows you pictures or little movies of people without their clothes on, you need to either tell a teacher or you need to tell me. That's not safe for little kids to watch. Little kids aren't supposed to watch that. So make sure
Okay.
you tell us. Don't make it scary.
Hmm.
Don't make it sound like it's a monster. And when they become 7 or 8 years old, this is important to recognize. This is not the birds and the bees speech at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is similar to you're 8 years old, here's why you don't take a sip of dad's beer. You're 8 years old, here's why you don't take a puff of grandma's cigarette. These aren't good for little kids. Little
Hmm.
kids shouldn't do this. When you're 18 years old or 21 years old, you can make your own decision because you'll be a grown
Hmm.
up then. But
Hmm.
right now, in our house, we don't allow little kids to smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol or look at these kinds of pictures because they're
Hmm.
not healthy for you. And then I think the biggest thing that can be done, especially, and this is geared specifically towards boys
Hmm.
around 10, 11 years old, is that you explain porn induced erectile dysfunction.
Hmm.
This is, and you talk about a younger generation. When I was 20 years old, about 25 years ago, the rate of erectile dysfunction among 20-year-old men was 2 to 4%.
Okay.
The erectile dysfunction rate of men who are 20 now is 20 to 25%.
Okay.
This is because of pornography.
Hmm.
Overuse of pornography, it leads you to a place that you have erectile dysfunction issues. To put it plainly, your penis stops working. And I think if you sit with an 11-year-old boy and say, listen, I know you're very soon going to want to look at this stuff. I know very soon you are going to want to touch yourself to this stuff. That's normal. That
Hmm.
doesn't make you weird. That's very normal. But you
Hmm.
have to understand that if you do too much of this, essentially your penis can break.
Okay.
And if you want to have a girlfriend at some point, if you want
Hmm.
to get married, if you want to have all of these things with girls, they're not going to want a boyfriend or a husband whose penis doesn't work. So don't participate in these activities because it may ruin your life. It may hurt your life. It may break your penis. And I think if we tell this to 11-year-old boys, I think that might have a real effect on our pornography addiction rates or even our pornography use rates.
So many times I also found that parents, let's say for the small children, that for if they have girls, that, hey, do you have a boyfriend at school? So do you think that kind of things or thoughts there you are giving to your kids, having kind of a sex, thinking about the sex at the time of like they are very, I mean, it's very teen old age?
I don't think it has much of an influence, or it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have nearly the influence that their friends have. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have nearly the influence that media has.
Mm-hmm.
So parents may make mistakes. Every parent makes mistakes. When I work with someone and we start to talk about some of the mistakes their parents made,
Mm-hmm.
I always say, we're not blaming them. If they didn't know how to be a parent, we
Mm-hmm.
can't blame if they didn't were not taught, did not get skills to be a good parent, we can't
Mm-hmm.
blame them, but we have to understand why. I think that most kids, especially teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
don't care what their parents have to say. They
Mm-hmm.
care about what their friends have to say. They care about what they see on TikTok. They care about what they hear on Spotify. They care about going out on Friday and Saturday nights. What mom and dad are saying about anything doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think that we also, and one thing that I always tell parents, who, I always have a parent in any library, any church, any place I go to speak. There's always a parent who says, well, we have filters on our kids' phones. We have blockers on our kids' phones. And I said, oh, wow. There are
You block one phone.
there are
How-
4 billion smartphones in this
exactly.
world. Thank you for doing a great job blocking one. What happens when he gets on the bus and his friend doesn't have blockers on his phone and says, hey,
Exactly.
look at this? Parents have to understand we now live in a world where it's not a matter of if your child is going to see pornography. It's a matter of when. And you can try to bury your head in the sand. You can try to build a wall around your child. Your child is going to see it. If you don't know how they're going to react, you have not equipped your child for this world properly.
I agree. I agree. In society that we are continuous pretending the porn addiction isn't a problem, right? If the patient stays silent, schools stay scared, and the couples keep brushing it under the rug. What kind of emotional collapse are we heading towards in the next 10 years?
I'm worried because there was a 2017 study by an organization called the Barna Group. They interviewed hundreds of men in America. What they found was that men who were 18 to 30, almost 33% of these men said that they had a problem with pornography, they were developing a pornography addiction, or they flat out had a pornography addiction. 32% of men 18 to 30 in 2017. Many of these men are older now. The kids who are younger, more of them are becoming addicts.
Right.
So what happens when this world, when 30% or 40% of men are addicts? And what's also scary is the straight white male pornography rates have grown, but where they've grown, people of color, where they've grown, women, where they've grown, religious types. Again, going back to what we talked about earlier about the access to it. You don't have to feel ashamed. You don't have to be worried somebody's going to see you. So, and Whether you're black or a woman, or you believe in Jesus or Allah or
Hmm.
Muhammad, we all have working sex organs. And I believe that if we do not handle this, if we don't start to educate and really talk about this in society, I think that the people of color, that the women, that the religious types, they're going to rise and have the same addiction rates eventually as the straight white male. Um, that's where we're headed. And if we have even 35%, 1 out of 3 people in our society sexually unhealthy and having some kind of issue with sexually charged media, be it pornography or social media or whatever it is,
Hmm.
if it's causing the same effects, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And
Yeah.
I think we're already starting to see that with things like incel culture and all of these guys who are into nofap and
Yeah.
and these fans of Andrew Tate and a lot of these guys who start to blame women
Hmm.
for all of their problems. The belief that 80% of women only want 20% of men.
Yeah.
That's statistically not true, because if
Hmm.
that were true, we would be seeing birth rates fall at astronomical rates. We would be seeing marriage drop at astronomical rates. We're not seeing that. But what are we
Hmm.
seeing? We're seeing the current generation, Generation Z, and even some of the older alphas are having less sex than anybody going back to the 1910s.
Yeah.
Your great grandparents were having more sex than the 20-year-olds are having now. I think we're already starting to see some of the problems. There's going to be a lot of resentment. There's going to be a lot of celibacy, either chosen or not. I think that socially this is going to affect people. I think that it will affect how we look at families. I think it's going to affect how men look at women, how women look at men. Um, we're all sexual beings, but you and I can go onto the internet and in the next 3 hours see more pornography than our
Hmm.
great grandfather ever saw in his entire life. And then tomorrow we can do it again. And tomorrow we can do it again. And tomorrow we can do it again.
Yeah.
But you essentially still have the brain of your great grandfather.
Hmm.
Your brain has not evolved at the rate of technology.
Hmm.
We still have our little lizard grandfather, great great grandfather brains that never was exposed to this stuff. So we are still learning, because it's only been 25 years, what's truly happening here and what the effects will be on people. And I'd like to also add that I believe that the pandemic, while that made pornography rates explode,
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the legacy of the pandemic. I think the
Yeah.
legacy of the pandemic is that we are going to find out, as we study over the next 10, 20 years, that there is also an addiction to making pornography. Is it really that different to be a consumer or a producer? I don't think
I don't
so.
think
I
so.
think
Yeah.
it's different sides of the same coin. And when I was working on that book that I wrote, I was talking to some women who did it, especially young women who did OnlyFans starting at the pandemic. I talked to them 4 or 5 months later. They
Hmm.
weren't talking about the money anymore. They were saying, "Oh, look at all the attention I get. I can't get a date in real life, but I've got men who want to meet up with me and be with me in my inbox every day. I've had men offer to fly me all over the world. I've had men offer, marriage proposals."
Hmm.
And when I hear some of these younger ladies say this and not talking about the money anymore, it's like, wow, they're getting a dopamine hit. They're getting attention they never have before. They are getting all of the same chemicals that the porn addict who watches is getting.
I agree.
We've got 4 million people on OnlyFans now, up from 300,000 in only 5 years. Clearly, and we're not in a pandemic anymore. Clearly, there is something to this. And I think that's what we're going to hear and learn more about moving forward is what are the effects on these millions of women and men who make this stuff? We haven't studied that yet. That's what also worries me about the future. Forget all the people who are porn fiends who need this stuff to focus. Are there going to be 50-year-old, 60-year-old men and women who still have OnlyFans pages, who still are cam models, not because they're making more money, but because they just need 2 or 3 people to watch them perform?
Yeah, I agree. Do you believe that that is also because of the people, the Gen Z peoples, or they don't want to struggle anymore and they don't want to earn money so quickly? That's why they are jump into it.
Again, it's a culture thing, and yes, I believe that. We do raise children very
Because
differently.
I talked to one of that lady that she's constantly asking me, I want to earn so much money. I don't want to work late night or for any companies. I do whatever I want, but don't give me any suggestions, kind of. So she got frustrated and she said, just F off and I don't want to talk anymore. If you want to see me or just give me the money, that's it.
Yeah, and that's the attitude of a lot of those people. And I guess that it's better to say, you need to give me $20 to see some of this,
I
than
just asked one
to
question.
just string them along or tease them. I guess it's better to just say, here's the price.
Exactly.
But yeah, who really knows what's going to happen in the long run to them? Because the human mind, and this goes back to neuroplasticity, the human mind wants to do the least amount of work possible. That's just how we are biologically. If we could all sit around and watch TV and do nothing and be perfectly and be fed and taken care of, most of us would. But that's not the way the world works. And sadly, like you talked about, the average porn star has a 3-year shelf life. Well, go look at them a year later when they are working part-time at Walmart and don't have the skills to even do that because they leaned on the beauty of their body and they leaned on the liberalness of their exhibitionism to make a quick buck. And like we say, well, if you can just take your top off and make $1,000 a day, great, you'll have money for the next 10 years. But once people stop paying for that, what do you have? And that's, again, what I fear for is there are very few people over 35 years old on cam sites or making OnlyFans. But they're going to get older. And they're going to keep doing it if they're addicted to it. And we are heading down a very dangerous sexual road where it's hard to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah. So what are the suggestions or what are the tasks that you have given to your clients that to get rid of this kind of addictions?
It depends on the person. The one thing that I can say is whether it was when I was in recovery 11 years ago, going through it myself with other people, or whether it's the 600 people that I've worked with over the last 5 years, no two people recover the same. It's always your own way. It's not like breaking a bone. 10 people break their wrist. They're all going to heal in about the same time. They're all going to heal in about the same way. That's not the case with addiction. That's not the case with mental health issues. It can take years, it can take months. It depends who you are. Are you willing to stop looking? Are you willing to stop touching? Are you willing to do the work of finding out why you were an addict? How much are you willing to put into this? How willing are you to change? That is ultimately what is going to determine how long it takes to get better, is how serious you take it. And for one person, they may love therapy. For another person, they may find that podcasts and books are the way that they heal. Another person may enjoy the 12-step groups. It doesn't matter how you recover. It doesn't matter how long it takes to recover. It just matters that you do.
Right. So imagine like a father thinks to his teenage son watching a porn is just normal. Imagine a wife who senses something off but is afraid to ask. And imagine a man who knows he has a problem but convinces himself he can control it. So if you had a one final warning to the families, the partners or the addicts, something that you could stop and slowly decay of their relationship, what would it be?
I would say that so many people in relationships do not want to believe the truth about their partner. If it's negative, if it is stands in contrast to their beliefs, to their morals, to their value system, they want to deny it's happening. And they will say something like, oh, my girlfriend can't be a porn addict because girls don't watch porn. Or, well, my husband is a pastor or a reverend. Religious people don't watch porn. There is no stereotype. It's like cigarettes. It's like alcohol. Anybody can have a problem with pornography. I have met them all. Smart, stupid, rich, poor, fat, thin, every color of the rainbow, every religion, every political persuasion. I have clients right now in 8 different time zones across the world who have nothing in common with each other, but they're all porn addicts. If you are trying to disqualify a partner, if you're trying to disqualify a family member or a friend, or especially if you're trying to disqualify yourself from being a pornography addict because you don't fit the demographic, there is no demographic. If you believe there's a problem, you need to address it either with yourself or with someone else. You cannot pretend it doesn't exist in your life if it does.
Right. Okay. It's really a deep conversation with you.
You got through this. I'm so proud of you. And the one thing I'd like to say to the people who have listened to this, you and I have been talking about 90 minutes.
Yeah.
We have not once talked about explicit pornography. We haven't talked about scenes. We haven't got R-rated or X-rated. You do not have to talk about the content of pornography to have a conversation about pornography. I think that's what stops a lot of people. Oh, well, let's talk about these dirty scenes. No.
Exactly. No. I don't want to do that. Yeah.
You don't have to do that. And I never do that in my education. I never do that in my sessions. It doesn't matter what you look at. It matters why.
Yeah. I agree.
And you made it. I'm so proud of you. You made it through the whole conversation.
Thank you so much, sir. Let's have a fast rapid fire round. I'm going to ask 10 questions. Yes. 10 questions. It's a one word option only. Okay. Okay. So porn is an addiction or an entertainment?
Both.
Okay. As a victim, user or a performer?
Both.
What is the root cause? Trauma or a curiosity?
Trauma.
Betrayal trauma feels like death or divorce?
Death.
Most dangerous site, Pornhub or OnlyFans?
Neither.
Neither.
Dark web. Frankly, those are very tame sites compared to what's out there. I guess I would say Pornhub
Okay.
because it's free, and there are some really weird things on there.
Yeah. What is the harder things to fix, marriage or mind?
Mind.
What is the biggest villain, shame or silence?
Shame.
First step to recovery, honesty or therapy?
Honesty.
Better sex life comes from connections or control?
Connections.
Future of porn addictions, collapse or explosion?
Explosion.
That's it.
I like that. That was good.
So that's final things that I want to share with the audience, that if your kids has a phone, they have access to the industry that ruined your marriage. If your partner hides their screens, there's a reason. And if you are still saying it's not a real addiction, you're already too late. The damage is already happening.
Perfectly said. Perfectly said.
Thank you so much for coming. It was really wonderful conversations. I really like a lot talk about. Maybe that this conversation will more about that one. Probably that we will have the next episode. Probably this episode I'll convert into the 2 because it's a long episode right now.
Yep. That
Yeah.
happens with a lot of the shows I'm on where people say, we're only going to talk for 50 minutes, and then 2 hours
Exactly.
later, they're like, oh, wow, I guess I get 2 or 3 episodes out of this one. So I understand.
Yeah. Thank you so much. One second.